Hello, everyone, and welcome to our last webinar of the year. So today we'll be talking through essential Oracle JD year-end steps. We're going to be sharing expert tips, including our experiences and key updates from Oracle. The goal today is to ensure that you're fully prepared to tackle year-end tasks with confidence. Okay, so before we begin, we just like to go over some housekeeping items. First, please interact with us via polls, reactions, and Q&A. So your questions in the Q&A are going to be sent anonymously, and during the entire webinar, you're going to be muted and stay muted. So please utilize the Q&A. The chat is not going to work for you guys today, so please do Q&A. And then also, the recording of this webinar is going to be live on our website within 24 hours. So just in case you need to step out and rewatch it later, it'll be on our iAM HCM website. All right, and you might be wondering who I am. My name is Jessa-May David-Cortez, and I'm the HCM Managed Services Lead. A fun fact that I'd like to share is that I used to actually work back in Alaska for a company that was a client of iAM HCM, and I used to be one of the attendees for the webinars that iAM would host. So this is kind of a full circle moment for me because now I'm hosting a webinar for iAM HCM. And I'm going to pass the mic along to my co-presenter here, so she has a chance to introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Bertha Gonzalez Interial, and I am a senior HCM consultant. And one fun fact that I want to share with you today is I have checked hands with 3 presidents.
Cool. That's 3 more than I have, Bertha. Okay, so if any of you guys, like, we like to be interactive here. So if any of you guys want to take a swing and guess who the 2 US presidents are, go ahead and write your answers down on the Q&A, and we'll disclose the answers here in a little bit. So while you guys are doing that, have a moment to do that. I'd also like to mention that we have our human AI working behind the scenes. Go ahead and introduce yourself if you can. Okay, so I guess she's behind the scenes, but she wants to stay silent and quiet. But our human AI is Angela Panganiban, so she's behind the scenes right now. Just wanted to mention her name.
As you can see, AI is not always correct.
And humans are prone to errors, right?
Don't expect to be perfect.
Okay, some of the guesses here. Which presidents? So we have Obama and Bush. Those are the answers we have so far. Bertha, who are the 2 US presidents?
It was the 41st president and the 42nd. So you better do your homework.
Well, I used to have all the presidents memorized up till maybe that 42nd, but I can't remember now. That was back in middle school.
It
So
was
which one?
George Bush, the father, and President Clinton.
Oh, okay, so someone did get one of them right. Cool.
Mhm.
Okay, so after that, we'd like to tell you more about what we do here at iAM HCM Consulting. So does your HR software make you want to scream or pull your hair, sometimes pound your keyboard or throw your keyboard or punch the screen? Well, we can help alleviate your HR software headaches. We're a boutique consulting firm of HR technology experts, and we offer consulting for any HR and payroll software. So not just JDE Edwards, but also Workday, SAP, UKG, Infor, Oracle HCM Cloud. Any software, really. What we want to do is help you either fall in love with your current system again or help you implement and strategize a new HR system. From configuration to integrations to data conversions, project management, development, and training, we can help support you on your HRIS journey. As for our JD Edwards customers, we offer proprietary access to the JDE HCM Resource Hub, which contains bootcamp courses and covers stuff such as payroll, benefits, HR, and time and labor, as well as knowledge assessment quizzes and much more. It's free to sign up and get started with the free content and see what's included in the subscription, such as our how-to videos called HCM Bites, sorry. And for our managed services clients, you have complimentary access to all that I've mentioned so far. Okay, so to kick things off, we like to be interactive here and we like to see our audience engage. So for our first poll number 1, do you all feel ready for the year end? So you may answer
No.
either you're not ready. Well, you have to be ready. You have to be ready. Bertha, we're presenting here. Your answer needs to be yes. So let's see
Mhm.
what others have answered. Okay, it's about 50-50. Half are ready, half aren't, but hopefully after this webinar, they'll have more confidence to tackle year end. Because it can be a monster, but I mean, we have our weapons here.
Yeah, that's the reason why we are here, right? To alleviate that issue.
Correct. Okay, so we have here our fun and colorful graphic, and this will help you on your year-end journey. It has the major task here, which is outlined in steps 1 through 7, and also the general order in which to complete this. So today during our webinar, we're going to be using this as a guide to cover highlights and some details for each step today. So today's webinar is going to be a very high level overview of the whole year-end process. Right. And if any of you are feeling like this after seeing that last slide, go ahead and feel free to give us a reaction.
Oh no, we yes. For W2 again.
I feel overwhelmed about the holidays. That's how I feel. This
Well,
stuff is like, this stuff
including
is
the
okay.
W2s also.
Let me see. Okay, not many, some people are, yeah, I feel overwhelmed. Some like, okay, let's bring it on. I'm ready to do this. Okay, so what do you got to do with anything is preparation is key. It is kind of cliche, right? But it's very true when it comes to your end. You need to take the time to prep. So what are some of the things that you need to do to prep for year end? First, you need to make sure that your year end updates are loaded because this ensures that your system is current with payroll tax tables, reporting requirements, and any legislative changes. So this year, JN 21129 and JN 2113 are the 2024 ESUs, and they are available for download. So if you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and apply them as soon as possible.
We cannot emphasize enough the need to plan ahead of time to install this ESU. But it's not enough just to plan. You need to communicate this about this plan to IT because it doesn't matter how well you prepare for this, but if you don't include the IT in your plans for the critical dates, you're going to be having issues or unexpected surprises at the end.
And
So
it's not going to be a good surprise, right? It's going to be an
yeah, it's
unpleasant
not gonna
surprise.
be a good one. And you trying to be on the ESU panic mode during this month or next month. I remember one December, a company decided to delay the ESU process, but it was because IT was not communicated about this critical ESU that needs to be installed. So it was a payroll team that didn't communicate. So they say, okay, now we have to wait until IT is ready to accommodate this installation. So it was almost at the end of December or the first week of the year when ESU informed payroll team, okay, now we're ready to do the installation of the year-end ESU. Well, what was the first reaction that payroll had? Oh no, it's kind of too late. And what we're gonna do? They start in the panic mode. So IT also was in a hurry to install the CSU, knowing that payroll was desperate to start the testing process. So they hurry up in the process and they communicated to payroll. Now it's time to go through the testing. Payroll knew that they were not going to complete all the steps to complete the testing process because they didn't have enough time. But they have to work with this time constraint because there was no other way. So they went through the process and they approved the ESU to move to production. When the ESU was moved to production, it seems like everything was fine. They were able to process the W-2s. And when it was time to print the W-2s, guess what happened? Yeah, you were right. The forms were not printing correctly. Why? Well, they didn't know, so they called immediately. IT, we need your support. And they, IT reviewed the issue and found out and said, oh, we missed one critical step, which was this particular client was going to use the BI publishing template, and they missed the step of applying the special instructions. So, in order to correct this issue, IT decided that they have to move this ESU from production to development environment. And you know what happened? Payroll team was in panic mode. Oh, we're not going to meet our deadlines, but there's nothing else that can be done. So the lessons learned here is the company did not meet the deadlines to submit the W-2s and they face penalties. So you don't want to be in that kind of situation. So plan ahead of time and communicate your plan with IT.
Right. Especially since these ESUs come out around beginning of December, mid-December, and it's the holidays, so everyone's
Mhm.
already going on vacation. And I mean, if you only have one person or two people doing this and they're both out, like you're going to be in a pickle or you're going to be in a
Yeah.
tight spot. So as soon as they're out, don't wait till it's too late. Make sure you apply these. So apart from the ESUs, you also need to make sure that you're up to date with your Vertex taxes. These requirements, because these requirements do change annually, so updating and testing these changes ahead of time will help you out in the long run.
And also, this process is not like you have to do it at the end of the year. It is an ongoing process. Companies, most of the time, they overlook these updates coming from Vertex. Why? Because payroll is always busy doing so many other tasks. So the best practice is to have someone dedicated to review these updates when it's coming from Vertex and identify which one the company needs to apply based on the tax requirements at the time, because otherwise it's going to be so easily to oversee and do not apply this, and you're going to end up with nightmares at the end of the year end.
Right.
And the most important thing here, you're going to have very unhappy employees at the end of the year when W-2s are going to be coming and they're going to know that they are not having the correct tax withhold.
Yeah, you're going to be getting plenty of emails or calls because of this. So try to avoid that and don't wait till it's too late and get on those updates. I mean, just like with, I mean, I'm sure pretty sure everybody here has a smartphone, right? And you're constantly getting those updates. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to use your phone. Like for me, if I don't update it, I try to go, remind me later, remind me later. Then it gets annoying. It's like, no, it's already later. You need to update now. I'm like, all right. So also, if you wait, you're not going to meet these deadlines because there are deadlines for issuing and filing. And I can't remember if you mentioned it, but there's hefty fines involved with that. So not just
Mhm.
unhappy or disgruntled employees, but big fines that could have easily been avoided.
That's correct.
Okay, so once you've had your, once you load your ESUs and make sure you're up to date with Vertex, next you would need to reconcile or verify your data, such as you need to validate your earnings and deductions. So earnings and deductions such as tax information across the year to ensure that they're accurate. You also need to compare your payroll registers and reports, such as the tax history, against your general ledger to confirm that all your totals align. And run integrity reports, run it in proof, then make the necessary corrections, then run again in final or update mode. And most importantly, ensure that your employee data is accurate, such as the social security number, name, date of birth, and verify that company information is updated and accurate, and also review your PDBA setup. This is all part of the whole verification and reconciling data process.
Yes, and it's very important to mention here that validating the earnings and deductions, you can utilize a lot of um, reports to compare the history tables. Remember, the details and summary history tables needs to be in sync in order to avoid issues with the W-2s. When you also need to run the integrity reports very frequently, don't wait to the end of the year to start doing this process because it's going to be a lot of time consuming. So it's recommended to run these integrity reports every time that you run your payroll cycles. And that reason, it will alleviate this issue. But let me tell you some funny story. I remember one year when I was going to help this company with the W-2s. And my first question that I asked them, are you running your integrity reports? They say, oh, yes, we are. Oh, yes, we know that that's the best practice to do it. I say, and how often do you make the corrections? I say, corrections? No, we don't make the correction. We just run them. So I said, it doesn't make any good if you just run the reports, but you don't make the correction. You need to make the corrections and update the history by running these reports in final mode. So it was so funny, and I never forget that story. And also another thing that you need to take in consideration is the employee data. When I mean, especially the employee's mailing address. One thing that most companies do is like in the month of December, they submit massive emails to all the employees to validate their mailing address and try to avoid receiving a lot of W-2s forms back to the company because they didn't have the correct addresses. Another thing that you need to take in consideration is the mailing address of your company. Sometimes companies use two different addresses, one for paychecks, and another one for W-2s. And usually for the paycheck is the PO box. For the W-2, you need to have the actual mailing address. So don't forget to update the address book with the correct mailing address because you don't want to print all the W-2 forms knowing that you were using the incorrect mailing address.
Correct. Okay. So once you verify your history, we're going to roll on over to the next slide here and discuss what happens next. So speaking of rollovers, see, the pun was intended there. Well, you do your rollover, you run your rollover program because you're wanting to transfer the balances from this year onto the next year. So the best time to do that is after the last payroll of the year and before the first payroll of the new year. And a good practice is to roll over your accrual DBAs that are set up to apply annual limits to your payroll month history, which is the FO6 146, which is based on payment dates, and calendar month history, which is your FO6 145, which is based on the work dates. So roll over your accrual DBAs and your declining balances, such as 401ks or loans, 401k loans, sorry. Yeah, there's a button on the rollover screen where you can roll over all your DBAs, but we do not recommend doing that. What we do want you to consider, though, is maybe roll over your balances, uncollected balances for your terminated employees.
And one of the main reasons why we don't recommend to roll over all the DBAs is because we want you to avoid unnecessary issues with the payroll calculations. Most of the time, if you do that, you just check mark and select all the DBAs because that's the easiest things to do. You're going to end up with time, taxes limits, or DBA limits that are not reset correctly just because this step that you avoid.
Right. So you should, beforehand, you should have like a list of your DBAs, accrual DBAs, and especially pay attention to new DBAs that you created this year.
During the year. Yeah, that's an easy thing to do, to miss. You create a DBA in the middle of the year, and then by the time that you're going to run the W-2s, you forgot that you didn't create a DBA, IRS code, and it's going to be kind of too late. The auditing reports are not going to match because there's one DBA missing.
Right. So after that, so you've gone ahead and rolled over all your DBAs, your accrual and declining balances. The next step is to create and generate your W-2s. So you do this using the W-2 workbench, which is the P07810. And the basic steps are to create this year's year-end ID. You can go ahead and add a completely new one, or like most companies do, you can copy over last year's year-end ID. Something to note, though, is that this needs to be a unique ID. Just like with your payroll IDs, you have to have a unique year-end ID, and also make sure that you include the special handling. So if you're copying the year-end ID, your special instructions, reports model, and parameters should pretty much stay the same. But I would review it and make any necessary updates for this year. After which you would run the work file build and submit it so that you can review your W-2s. During this step, you should be able to see who's all part of the work file build, and you can go ahead and spot check any employees. And that's one way to verify your information, as well as running your audit reports.
Yeah, the audit report is a great tool to help you to identify if there is an issue. If the DBA do not match, or if you have a tax issues, so run them and take a look and see if it can help you to identify any issues.
Yeah, just like with the previous step, you should run your integrity reports. Like, run your reports, but don't just leave it there to sit. Actually review it and do something with that data. Make informed decisions or make corrections. They're there for a reason. They're tools that are to help you and prevent you from having to do more work later on when making corrections. So after that process, you would think you should go ahead and print all your W-2 forms, but you should at least test print one W-2 form for formatting before printing all the others. You don't want to go through the whole process of printing about 1,000 forms just to realize something's awry. So our recommendation is to print one form first before proceeding with the rest of the forms.
And in addition to print these forms, 1 or 2 forms, we recommend you to use the actual printer that you're going to use when you're going to use for printing W2, because sometimes during the testing you were using one printer, and then at the time that you are ready to print all the forms, you say, oh, by the way, we're going to switch printers because actually this is the printer that we're going to use at this time. And believe me, not every single printer are the same, even though it's going to be the same model and everything. You're going to have issues. So lessons learned here: always tested these W2 forms with the correct printer, the one that you're going to use for the final forms.
Also, the correct paper, because there's special
Oh,
paper that you need for
that's
this,
secure.
not just not
Mhm.
just your regular 8x11 paper, right? There you
Yeah.
have the 2-part print, 4-part. So make sure you
Mhm.
use the correct printer and the correct paper.
And make sure that you order enough paper because you don't want to be identify that, oh, we don't have enough paper to print all the forms because we made a mistake and we have to rerun the whole batch again. Seems something simple, but at the end, it can save you time.
Right. So once you're sure that everything lines up correctly, you've tested your printer, the forms look okay and all good, you can go ahead and print the rest of your W2 forms. And then subsequently, you would also need to create your electronic work files to submit for federal and state filings, which is the EFW2. And you would use the JDE functionality or whatever third-party software that you're using to submit these year-end filings, such as your 941s and state-specific wage reports. So one thing to note is that I did mention that this is very similar to the payroll workbench. And when you do submit your jobs, it goes to submitted jobs. Well, in this case, your work file doesn't go to submitted jobs, but it goes to an export folder. And what we've seen is this kind of causes some delay because some employees that do run this process, turns out that they don't have the necessary access or the correct security to access these export folders. So we advise that you work with your IT team or CNC team to work these details out beforehand.
Okay, and another thing that we want to emphasize here, that let's say that you already complete the entire W2 process and you are ready to print the forms and everything looks so good. Everybody's so happy. Well, it's time to submit the file to the IRS. And guess what? The person who was doing it the last year is not here with the company anymore. And what happened? Well, you need a user ID and password to upload this information to the IRS. And guess what? You only have 1 week in order to do that. And if you don't have that user ID ready to upload, you are going to be behind. And you don't want that, because after all this hard work they already did, and you fail the easiest part, which is to have the user ID and password. So don't be in that kind of situation.
Yeah, otherwise the IRS puppets are gonna come after you.
And
Um,
penalize you for being
oh, shoot,
late.
and that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that process could take, I know, up to 2 weeks at
Up to two
sometimes, right?
weeks. Yeah.
So if you're down to the final hour, I mean, you're definitely going to miss your deadline and have to pay
Mhm.
fines.
For something very simple that you can prevent.
Okay, so you've submitted everything and then you realize, oh no, we reported something wrong. I mean, in a perfect world, in a perfect setting, all the W-2s are going to come out correct. But come on, let's be realistic here. Mistakes happen, and no matter how much you do your due diligence with prepping and testing, you're bound to have to make corrections. And
Mhm.
some of the corrections you're going to be having to make are correcting tax amounts, employee name, social security number, and employee addresses and deduction amounts.
Yes, this step we're always trying to avoid, no matter what. Why? Because it's not an easy task. Creating W2Cs and JD Edwards is very cumbersome, very complex. But sometimes there's no way that you can avoid this unless you can minimize this if you plan ahead and execute the plan effectively and on time. But that's, that's
Right.
much that you can do.
Just as if you follow the previous steps that we did cover, such as reconciling your data or verifying your history, like Bertha said, you can't completely eliminate having to do this, but you can reduce or minimize having to do this. So once you do make your corrections, though, you need to again go through the whole process like you just did with the W2s and create your work file again. But there are some things to note when you're doing the W2Cs. And C, as you all probably guess, stands for corrections.
Mhm.
So some of the things you do have to know is that your W2C will only be created if the W2 was printed with a print date. And then you don't have to run the whole process again for all employees, just select employees that had the corrections, and you can do this through additional parameters. So I did mention that this is very similar to the payroll workbench. It's similar to just resetting an employee or doing changes only for the employees that did have changes. And then for this year-end ID, you need to make sure that your process type is equal to a 2 for the W2Cs. So you'll have to create new W2Cs and W3Cs, as well as the electronic media files, which would be the
Mhm.
EFW2C. So it's pretty much the same as just the previous process we covered with W2s, but for corrections.
Yeah.
And then after this, you're almost done with your end, but there's a few steps that you need to do to help configure the payroll for the new year. So you need to set up new tax rates, such as federal, state, or local tax rates in JDE for your 941 reporting, and update your limits for earnings and deductions, such as your 401k plans, Social Security benefits, and other deductions. And lastly, review and archive your payroll data. So archive your prior year data so that your system's optimized and provides a clean slate for the upcoming year.
And we always recommended that before you're gonna do the first run of the payroll cycle for the year, do a test. Probably you already know that you have to do the testing, and this time is going to be in production, and it's recommended to run some interims. Select some of the employees that you know that is always have some kind of tax um, complex taxes, and also to double check that you have all the benefits and the accruals set up correctly. If the rollovers were processed correctly, this is where you're going to find out. So you can run interims and review the outcome. Also, you can run the normal payroll cycle, review the taxes, deductions, and benefit, and reset the payroll. But always test before you actually run the payroll cycle. Why? Because this is the time when you can make any corrections before it's too late. Because once you process the payroll and you go to the second payroll cycle of the year, you're gonna find that it's not just correcting that payroll cycle, but you have to correct the history, and you want to avoid that.
Right. So what do we have to do again, Bertha? Just kidding.
Test, test, test. This time, I know everybody's in worry about it because this is going to be in production, but that's the only way that
Well,
you're going to be able to
uh,
do that.
at my previous company, we had a saying, testing is for wimps. I'm just kidding. But I'm proud to say I'm a wimp if that's the case.
Doesn't matter. Test, test, test.
And then lastly, communicate with your employees. So you went through all this trouble, printed all your W-2s. Don't forget to send or distribute your W-2s out to your employees. And there are deadlines to keep in mind. So for your W-2s, the deadline this year is January 31st. And if you're not mailing it or sending it out, for example, if the company uses employee self-service, make sure that you communicate to your employees on how to access this, especially for new employees who haven't accessed their W-2s in the past.
Mhm. Good.
And speaking, as I mentioned, the deadline for W-2s is January 31st. For your reference, here are the other deadlines. So for W-2, W-3C, that one doesn't have a deadline, but you need to provide it to your employees as soon as possible. So for 499R2, which is for Puerto Rico, and the 1099s, as well as your electronic filing, they all pretty much have a deadline of January 31, 2025, which is the same for the W-2. In our next slide, if you attended the Oracle webinar on December 5, they did share some of these Oracle updates. So an important reminder is that beginning with year-end processing for tax year 2023, so for forms submitted in 2024, your JD Edwards Enterprise One payroll year-end and financial 1099 non-BI publisher year-end forms are no longer going to be supported or delivered in the year-end ESUs. So for more information on that, you can refer to this document ID here, 285831 0.1.
Okay.
And Bertha did talk about BI publisher special instructions earlier and how that caused issues. So there are actually special instructions for this tax reporting year for BI publisher. Something to note is that before printing your forms, that you'll need to update your templates with a start and end date as shown here on the screen. And this needs to be done each year to ensure that you only include the most current tax reporting year when printing and do not have the prior year and current year templates created incorrectly. So if you want more details on that, it's actually included on this document here, the JD Edwards HCM, sorry, that's a mouthful, come on. Oh,
Yes,
okay. Yeah, I make mistakes, right? Just like W-2 corrections, I have to correct myself at times. Okay, JD Edwards HCM year-end updates, BIP checklist, troubleshooting, and FAQs. That would be doc ID 2918540.2. And this is actually a good document. I refer to it a lot. I was just referring to it yesterday, actually, as well as some I think I have a BI publisher document here, but these are really helpful resources. They have a good amount of information and knowledge. So if you don't have it as a favorite already, go ahead and do that because I've had to refer to these, as I said, just yesterday.
This is a great resources. Good information on it.
All right, and to recap what we talked about today. So for preparation, we talked about taking the year-end ESU and taking up the latest Vertex updates. Next is reconciling your data. So verifying your payroll history, running your integrity reports, and not just running them, but reviewing them and making the corrections. Then don't forget to run it in final or
And
updated
final
mode.
mode.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't know.
Not
it's a
good.
Yes. And then you want to roll over your DBAs from this year to next year. So you run the DBA rollover program. And then you would utilize the W-2 workbench to create your W-2s. And if needed, to correct amounts or employee information, you need to also create W-2Cs and W-3Cs as well as your electronic files. And then configure your payroll for the next year by updating the limits for next year, and make sure to test everything. And it's okay to be a wimp. Testing is not for wimps, but test. And then submit or distribute your W-2s to your employees before the January 31st deadline. Hey, so for a second and final poll number 2, do you all feel ready for the year end? I'll give you a moment to answer. Okay, let's see. Most people think they're ready. Well,
Oh, great news.
Well, yeah, we're halfway through December, so I hope either way it's coming, right? Either way it's coming, it's here. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, I don't see any other questions on the poll or Q&A, but also we are a little bit over time, so if you do have questions, we are sharing our information here. So if you have any questions that we didn't answer today, or some questions come up that you didn't think about right now, feel free to reach out to us. And here's our contact information. Also, if you need any year-end support of any kind, or if you need any help with your year-end process, we're more than happy to help. So please reach out. And that concludes our webinar, everyone. So thank you for joining us, and Merry Christmas to all of you and a Happy New Year. And we hope to see you again next year, 2025. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, Bertha.
Thank you.